Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I am so very glad you've chosen to join me for this webinar. I have packed this full of juicy goodness talking about combating IBS, right? So for those of you who are new here, I'm Melissa Homner, founder and lead coach at Sagebrush Wellness. My team and I specialize in disease resolution for those who struggle with chronic pain and illness as a result of autoimmune activation in their bodies. IBS is a common issue for our clients and one that you can recover from once you understand what is causing this in your body and then have the tools and the know-how to turn it around, right? So our goal, my team and I work together to serve our clients to not only help them become well, but to know how to stay well. Thanks again for joining me. Let's dig in. So, IBS. This is something that is so very common. Let me see if I can get my screen to follow us here. All right. So let's talk about what IBS is. So if you have it, you know very well firsthand what it is, but let me just kind of explain it to you. Irritable bowel syndrome is often referred to as IBS. It is a chronic gastrointestinal disorder, and it's characterized by a host of different digestive dysfunctions and discomfort, such as frequent abdominal pain, gas, bloating, indigestion, and constipation. And a lot of times I see diarrhea or a kind of a really drastic shifting back and forth between diarrhea and constipation. So the symptoms and levels of severity vary greatly between individuals, but this digestive disorder can be quite disabling. For example, I worked with a gentleman who was an executive, and he did a lot of flying. He did a lot of, he held a lot of meetings. He was at the podium a lot, and he had IBS so bad that he would literally, make sure he knew where every bathroom was in whatever facility he was at, holding meetings. He would have to gauge, excuse me, when he was able to eat. It was crazy because IBS ruled his life and he was doing what he wanted to do. He loved his job. He loved being able to travel, but he was contemplating quitting his job because of the IBS symptoms and how it was affecting his life, right? It was really messing with what he was able to do. So for some IBS clients, it means mapping their day around public restrooms or limiting their social life to avoid going to unfamiliar places and rejecting travel plans due to the behavior of their large intestine. I mean, it can be really crazy. Anxiety and depression are often associated with dealing with IBS due to this illness, as well as its ability to negatively affect one's emotional, social, and professional life. And I wasn't going to go very deep into this piece as well, but I want you to really understand that when this dynamic is happening in your intestinal tract, one, your body is not able to take up the nutrition that is needed. Two, often one of the dynamics that is feeding into this process is the fact that your food is not getting broken down, right? It's going through too quickly. Your body isn't able to uptake nutrition. And what is needed for good, solid immune action in your digestive tract, as well as balanced hormone function, these things are not being supported because your body is not able to use the food that you're bringing in, right? So when these things aren't supported, especially on the long term, you get some real imbalances happening just because of this dynamic. So anxiety, depression, feeling alone, feeling like you can't handle what's going on with life, these are normal when you have IBS, But these are also things that can be turned around when we address the root causes of your IBS, right? Okay. So let's kind of define what this is a little bit further. So doctors define IBS as a functional gastrointestinal disorder because although the GI tract isn't functioning properly, there's no like really apparent physical damage. Yes, there's some swelling, but even for some people who have IBS and they get, you know, a scope or something, there isn't any apparent physical even swelling or redness that is happening. So this attitude, no, you know, not being able to see any apparent physical damage. Oh, excuse me. This attitude can encourage a lack of initiative in further research, right? So if you go to the doctor and they do a scope and they check you out and whatever, and they're like, you're fine, and send you home, but you know you're not fine. This is so very, well, it makes you feel like you're crazy, right? It makes you not trust your own intuition. It makes you not trust your own wisdom. So instead of really, for doctors, instead of really searching for a cure or really looking for the cause of this dysfunction for you, instead they wait for you to get bad enough that they can diagnose it and then medicate you to hopefully alleviate some of the symptoms. But the problem with this approach is that it's not going to fix anything, right? The same long-term imbalance is just going to keep going and going and going and getting worse. That's why, as my team and I, as functional medicine health coaches, we work to discover the why behind this disease dynamic for you. And I'll just tell you, it's probably going to be different for you than it was for my gentleman who traveled a lot that I was telling you about, right? There are different drivers generally for each person. So IBS is a collection of different symptoms specific to the individual, and the root cause will also likely not be the same for everyone. So hear me when I say this, ignoring the diversity in this disorder is dangerous because leaving the underlying cause unaddressed can escalate to more serious conditions such as autoimmune disorders. And I've seen this happen so many times. So if you have IBS or you have a suspicion that you have IBS, please contact my team and I. We'll get you going and your body turned around so that you are not progressing into something more scary, right? And we are accepting new clients, just letting you know that. All right, so let's talk about the functional medicine side of this. So functional medicine is revolutionizing healthcare by empowering clients to better understand the imbalances in their bodies, how these imbalances affect their health, and the solutions available to support the normal healing mechanisms within their body. I just love this because our bodies are able to heal. They're able to recover when we give them the right conditions. So that's what we do as functional medicine health coaches. That's what we help you do, right? So functional medicine differs from other medical models used today due to its defining principles of personalized care specific to the individual. We're able to provide quick relief using natural remedies, food and lifestyle shifts that support our long-term goal of wellness. The focus on the causes of discomfort rather than simply the symptoms. And a deep-seated trust in the client's body to self-regulate, right? Your body is so wise. Your actual, I just love telling people this and watching their eyes go big, is that our body's default is to be well, right? Our body's default is to be well. Okay. So IBS is one of the most underdiagnosed conditions in the US, right? So studies have shown that the prevalence of this disease ranges anywhere from 10% to 25% of adults. And it's unclear the accuracy of these figures, however, due to the stigma and ignorance around IBS. So some of the obstacles include people not consulting with a doctor, right? This is just, they take this as, this is me, this is part of me, this is just the way my body works, and there's nothing you can do about it, so I'll just deal with it, right? Also, patients have been written off as experiencing psychosomatic symptoms, right? Basically saying, honey, it's all in your head, go home. I don't know how many times I've heard that from clients when a doctor will say, look at them and just, shake their hand and say, it's in your head, hon, go home. So, and it's not, I just want to tell you, it's not. Your wisdom, your intuition is not lying to you, okay? We're not going to tell you that when you come to see my team and I. We're going to dig in and figure out what's going on for you. The third obstacle is the attitude that digestive discomfort is normal. Just pop some Tums, right? That is not correct. And just popping Tums, especially if you do that for years, can really damage your digestive system. Just saying. So, regardless, irritable bowel syndrome is the most common functional digestive disorder out there. Some reports estimate between 38 to 96 million Americans suffer from IBS in their lifetime, yet only 5 to 7% of them receive a proper diagnosis, which I want to just say a quick word about diagnoses here. Just receiving a diagnosis doesn't help fix the issue, right? It just gives you a name for the issue. And if you're working with a physician, it just allows them to then begin to prescribe medication. It's not really going to dig into the why, what is actually driving this dynamic for you. And it's not going to help you get better. It's not going to help your body heal. All right. So IBS is diagnosed through a process of exclusion. So in other words, extensive lab testing, diagnostic experimentations, and procedures are often performed and recorded. If everything comes back normal and doctors are unable to accurately identify a diagnosable condition, the patient is then categorized under the IBS umbrella. So you see, this is kind of how IBS can be a lot of things, right? A more straightforward diagnosis system is difficult due to IBS's lack of apparent, 1, anatomical or structural problems, and 2, physical or chemical disorders. That's why when we really dig into this for you, we're going to dig into, what's going on for you as an individual. So some of the diagnostic tests used to identify IBS include medical history, physical exam, comprehensive blood tests, stool analysis, sedimentation rate, upper endoscopy, an IgG antibody test, breath bacterial tests. But as functional medicine health coaches, we don't need an actual diagnosis, nor do we provide it. What we look for is what systems in the body are out of balance and what are the triggers for your specific disease dynamic. And then we address these in a sustainable manner. Some of the tests that we may ask for, if needed, would be a GI map. You've heard me talk about those before if you've heard very many of my classes, which is a stool test. We may want some comprehensive blood testing. We may also want some food sensitivity testing. That's probably what we'll need. We may need a test for SIBO using a breath test, but that is we can usually see just by how the body is presenting symptoms if SIBO is an issue or not. So what are some common causes of irritable bowel syndrome? Just like everyone's experience with IBS is highly individualized, so are the initial causes of the onset of the disease process. Although IBS is not formally classified as an autoimmune disease, it shares many of the same risk factors, potential causes, and complications of the inflammatory conditions we know today. So some of these causes can be poor diet. Oh, I cannot tell you how much I see this. Leaky gut, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, what that actually is. Bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, parasites, food intolerances, antibiotic use that has just wrecked the natural balance in the microbiome. Toxin exposure. Once again, this goes to imbalances in the body not being able to process those toxins out. Chronic infections. This goes right along with bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, and parasites, right? Stress and physiological issues. We were talking earlier just briefly about how having IBS, this IBS dynamic in the body, can really mess with your ability to uptake nutrition from your food, right? That goes into the physiological issues. Hormone issues, we talked about that briefly as well. Up next, we will be discussing some of these causes in greater detail. So let's talk leaky gut. And you guys have heard this. I'm sure this is kind of a buzzword right now, but I want to kind of explain it to you because, you know, and when we hear the words leaky gut, it just feels like, you know, our entire intestinal tract is just full of holes, and it's, and maybe the misconception is that it's not supposed to be permeable at all. And both of those assumptions are incorrect. So your gastrointestinal tract, your small intestine and large intestine are a natural permeable barrier and serve as a barrier to prevent substances from entering the bloodstream before they have been processed down to the proper molecular level, such as your actual intestinal barrier prevents undigested food particles, microbes, and toxins, bacteria, all of those things from going outside of the actual digestive tract and into the cavity, the body cavity. And this is this is where your absorption happens, right? Of your food, your nutrients. So in all actuality, the small intestine is the actual lining is permeable. It has to be, right? But it's set up to have really tight junctions so that when our food is broken down to the correct molecular level, it is then introduced through the cell walls out into the bloodstream so that the nutrition that we've taken in through our mouth and our body has broken down is able to go out through the bloodstream and be delivered to the cells. That same bloodstream then collects toxins, just normal used up parts, old cells. You know, our body is so efficient, but all of that comes back through the bloodstream into the liver to be processed, and then all of the extra, everything that's used, comes back in through the liver, is processed, and then goes out through the urine and stool, right? Our bodies are so efficient. But one of the most vital and basic duties of the cells that line the intestinal wall is to regulate this intestinal permeability. So when things go sideways, however, there becomes if there becomes an IgG reaction, like a food sensitivity, if there comes in some bacteria that is not supposed to be there, some parasites, possibly the digestive secretions in the body is broken down, and then the food is not being digested as well as it needs to be. Our body's own response to that, which is protecting us, right, is to create inflammation in the digestive tract. When that happens, the tight junctions in between those cells, those epithelial cells, are going to be, how can I say, they'll become dysregulated, right? And there can become larger openings, larger than they're supposed to be. And when that happens, then things like undigested food particles, toxins, bacteria, all that stuff can go out into the actual body cavity, and our body just lights up, right? Just to protect us, because those things aren't supposed to be there. And our immune system can go pretty crazy, helping, doing its best to help us out. So this inflammation is what is known as leaky gut. And so food intolerances, infections, stress, and age are all factors that affect the gut's permeability and integrity. So the best way to address leaky gut syndrome is to participate in a functional medicine 4R program. And this is kind of the basic, and I'll go through this with you later on in this presentation, but the 4R program is just a basic how to, kind of the steps. And we use this loosely, but when we're working with clients, what we do is so individualized that sometimes the steps aren't in the same order as I'll be presenting them to you, because we follow what your body needs. All right. So let's talk about SIBO real quick. This is kind of a buzzword as well. So SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's kind of we haven't known about it for all that long, but it occurs when there are imbalances in the gut bacteria resulting in an overgrowth, right? So I don't know how far to go into this. I wasn't going to go too far today, but it is literally when your ileocecal valve, which is the doorway between the small intestine and large intestine, is not able to close properly because of inflammation in the actual digestive tract. So when that door literally doesn't close like it's supposed to, or it gets stuck because of inflammation, the microbes that live in your large intestine are really, really like drastically different than the ones who live in your small intestine, right? But when the bacteria that lives in your large intestine is able to sneak back through, because the ileocecal valve is not able to close well, and it's a one-way valve, right? Its main job is to not let bacteria from the large intestine sneak through to the small intestine. But when that happens, there is some major imbalance that happens, and it can be really uncomfortable, and it can wreak havoc on your body, okay? So this condition is often fueled by a diet heavy in sugar, alcohol, refined carbohydrates. Often we see a major symptoms as a result of things like fruit sugars, right? So many strains of the bacteria that have snuck through from the large intestine feed off of these nutrients. So also the use of antibiotics, acid blocking drugs, and steroids can disrupt the gut flora, creating an attractive environment for bacterial overgrowth. This can be a real problem. The cool thing is though, and this is contrary to popular belief as well, like I've heard from so many people, my doctor said I have SIBO and I'll never really be rid of it. My bacterial balance will never be healthy again. And I just want to cry, because that is not true. This is a dynamic that can be addressed sustainably, okay? So don't give up if somebody says you have SIBO. Just come on over to Sagebrush Wellness. We will help you with this. So addressing SIBO includes using the 4R program. I'm going to talk more about that. Dietary changes, and if needed, a round of antibacterial herbs. All right. So let's talk about no more yeast, please. Yeast overgrowth is very similar to SIBO in the sense that it causes many of the same IBS symptoms such as bloating, gas, constipation, and diarrhea, right? But instead of bacteria, it is a yeast or a fungus that is overgrown in response to an imbalance in the gut flora. So the most common form of yeast overgrowth is Candida. Candida is a type of fungus that is naturally present in our mouths and intestines to aid in digestion and nutrient absorption. We need it. We're born with it. We need it. However, in excess, Candida contributes to the breaking down of the intestinal wall. That is a common characteristic of leaky gut complications. This can lead to a variety of health problems, specifically IBS symptoms. So I want to say a little bit more about Candida. I see this affecting people's ability to regulate their moods. I see this affecting the body's ability to have healthy immune response. This is also something that can be one of the bases for reoccurring UTIs. This can also be a real factor in like folks who have autoimmune conditions that experience neurological issues, numbness, that type of thing. So Candida is something that is, when it becomes overgrown, it's not good. And it's actually quite easy to address using, changing up the food choices, using some herbal mixes, and really learning how to see the signs of Candida overgrowth for yourself as a person, as an individual, and then having the tools in your toolbox, knowing how to deal with that. So yeast levels can be tested by you getting a blood test, a stool test, or urine testing. Parasites, let's talk about this. And a lot of people go, "Ooh, I don't have parasites." And I just want to chuckle, because if you've ever walked barefoot, if you have a pet, if you've ever traveled, if you've ever butchered your own food, you know, these are all ways that we can come in contact with parasites. And it's not that you don't choose good food. It's not that you're doing something terrible. It's just that parasites are a part of life, okay? So parasites are much more common than most people consider. Contrary to popular belief, you do not need to travel to high-risk areas to be exposed to them. In fact, it is not difficult to contract a parasite by the imported food at the local grocery store, right? The main thing is that once they're ingested, the most common issue they contribute to is digestive damage and compromised nutrient absorption. Unfortunately, the healthy bacteria in the gut are not strong enough generally to defend against the parasite's rate of reproduction. Sometimes we can, but there are other times when this gets out of hand. Our bodies aren't able to handle, keeping parasites down. So we need to really address this. And this is something we can do with herbal mixes as well. So long story short, parasites can be directly harmful and often need additional care to eradicate their presence and potential damage. So let's talk about food intolerances, allergies, and sensitivities. So these can all contribute to significant digestive distress, much like those associated with IBS. So they can be very hard to detect for a number of reasons, including you may suffer from more than one. And especially if you have a leaky gut dynamic, you're going to be sensitive to a lot of foods, very likely. Elimination testing takes a significant amount of time, and most people don't really know how to do an elimination diet very well. They don't know what symptoms to look for. They don't know how to really read what their body is telling them. Not everyone reacts the same to food sensitivities. This is huge. I see this all the time. So, for example, let's just take dairy intolerance right now. Some people who have a dairy intolerance, as soon, give them half an hour and they're running to the bathroom after they've had something with dairy. Some people just get hot flashes, some gals. Some people, they just get really, really bloated. Some people, they don't see the effects until 24 hours later. And it's more of a mood, hormone crash or surge. So these are all different ways that the same food sensitivity can show up in someone's body, right? So symptoms of food intolerance can easily be misinterpreted without a coach beside you helping you understand what's happening. So luckily, there are several ways to test if you're suffering from a food allergy or intolerance, and I'm going to talk about those next. So let's talk about IgG antibodies. This is the most abundant abundant antibody in the human body and is found in all of the body fluids and works as a protection mechanism against bacterial and viral infections. Testing the levels of these antibodies in the blood can be an incredible tool to indicate adverse food reactions. My favorite test to use for this is the KBMO food sensitivity test. It's a home collection kit that is shipped to your door, which is really cool right now because a lot of people don't want to go out. You collect the samples and send it straight to the lab. When we get the test results back, you and I sit down for about an hour together and we really go over what's happening and how to deal with it, right? However, these methods of testing may not be available to everyone, which is why we otherwise recommend a comprehensive elimination diet. And I highly suggest doing, if that's your choice, I highly suggest doing that with a trained functional medicine health coach so that you can actually understand what your body is telling you, right? So let's talk briefly about an elimination diet. And this is something that a lot of people, I have a lot of clients who come in and say, oh, I did that, but I didn't learn a thing. And I just want to cry because it's not that their body wasn't telling them what they needed to know. They just didn't know how to understand what was, what the symptoms meant, what to look for. Okay. So this is why I highly suggest that if you want to do this elimination style, that you do it with a coach. So this elimination diet takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks in order to allow for any adverse food reactions to dissipate. And this has to be cold turkey, 100% elimination. Essentially, the goal is to bring your body to a blank slate diet-wise, so you can begin to reintroduce each food group individually. This gives you the opportunity to really recognize how each food makes you feel. The common food offenders as far as IBS, food intolerances, and digestive distress include dairy, gluten, soy, corn, eggs, refined sugar, peanuts, red meat, alcohol, caffeine, hydrogenated oils, packaged and processed foods. Sounds like a lot, right? And for some people, that's everything they eat. So it's a real switch. It's a challenge. And if you're working with a coach, they're able to help you really learn how to eat without using these foods. So unless otherwise advised, the following foods are safe and encouraged to consume during the elimination diet. So gluten-free grains, things like rice, quinoa, amaranth, tapioca, although tapioca in a lot of folks can be reactive. Buckwheat, teff, sometimes buckwheat is close enough to gluten that your body doesn't like it, but some people get along fine with it. Dairy substitutes, almond milk, coconut milk, hemp milk, rice milk, that type of thing. Find something that you like. Excuse me, vegetables, except for corn. Corn is really high in natural sugars. Whole fruits, fresh, frozen, or water packed. And I totally would have you do berries, not high, especially if you think you may have SIBO, not high sugar fruits, such as like oranges and apples and that type of thing. So really lean into the berries. Lean and clean animal protein, which is wild game, lamb, organic chicken, fresh fish. I am not totally against red meat in the elimination diet. I think we just need to really be aware of what the animals have been fed that we're eating, right? Nuts and seeds. So nuts, sometimes folks are really sensitive to nuts, which once again would be something that you would be able to pinpoint if you're working with a coach. Beans and most legumes, except for soybeans and peanuts. These also can be really hard on your digestive system if it's broken down too far, and these can be things that can be introduced later. High quality oils, and this is huge. We need to be using things like coconut oil, avocado, cold pressed olive oil. Herbal teas are amazing and really help with the healing process. Sweetener alternatives in moderation. And remember, anything that you put in to your body during this elimination diet has to be actual food. So nothing like aspartame, sweet and low, the fake sugars. We need to use things like honey, molasses, brown rice syrup, maple syrup, those types of things. And spices. Our spices, we need to not use spices that are hot. All right, during the reintroduction phase, it is incredibly important to pay attention to how each food makes you feel. This is done by reintroducing food groups one by one for 3 days at a time. So for example, if you're reintroducing dairy, I want you to bring in dairy 3 times a day, like have it for each meal for 3 days. Just reintroduce that food group, right? At the end of 3 days, it'll be pretty clear what your body thinks about dairy, all right? So you can pick one food to include in your diet again and take note of how it makes you feel for the next 3 days. Try the same process again for the additional 2 days. I like to stick with 3 and 3. And if your body doesn't give you any feedback on that food, you can choose to reincorporate that food into your regular diet. So just keep using these steps as you introduce each food group for the remaining eliminated foods. And if any seem to cause discomfort, stop eating them and wait until any symptoms subside before continuing the process, because you're literally letting the inflammatory response in your body subside. And if say you brought in dairy, right, and you're wanting to try soy next, well, your body really reacted to dairy, and then you don't give your body time to kind of settle back down before you bring in soy. It's a given. If you start the next reintroduction too soon, your body is still going to flare, right? So making sure to give your body time for that inflammatory response to settle before trying your next food reintroduction can really help with you not getting confused about what does my body think about this food, okay? Note that it is imperative to allow adequate time for both the elimination and reintroduction phases to ensure you receive the most accurate results possible. You can't hurry this whole process. As I promised, let's talk through the 4 R's, right? So the 4R program is administered to heal from digestive distress, reverse gut complications, and rebalance your gastrointestinal microbiome. This is an incredible tool to acknowledge and treat or address health issues, dysfunctions, imbalances, and personal health needs. And here are the basic steps. Sometimes we mix these up depending on what the individual client needs. So the first is remove. Eliminate problem foods, toxins, low-grade infections, parasites if present, and oxidative stress. Like take out anything in the body, food, lifestyle, all of that. It's not just, what's in the body. It can also be choices that you make and thought processes that are not serving you. We need to remove those, right? Change them. Second, we repair by introducing a clean diet with essential nutrients that your body needs. We also can use healing herbs that really support the especially when we're looking at leaky gut or the body not being able to produce its own digestive enzymes. Being able to really support that with some specific supplementation can help. Repopulate your gut with healthy bacteria to restore the proper balance of gut flora. This is a big one and it might take a bit. So then we replace, and the replace one, sometimes we use digestive enzymes straight out of the gate to really support food breakdown so your body can start getting the nutrition that it needs. Antioxidants if needed, immune boosting vitamins and minerals to support sustainable and healthy digestion. But as functional medicine health coaches, we're trained in this protocol and enthusiastic about making your individualized needs addressed during this whole process, walking beside you. It can be so confusing. It can be really overwhelming unless you have someone who's really teaching you showing you what's going on, helping you understand what's going on in your body, and then helping you put these steps into manageable bite-sized pieces, right? And really encouraging you as you go. That's part of our job as health coaches, right? Is to really serve and support you as you're making these life changes that are eventually going to bring you back to wellness. Let's talk about probiotics and prebiotics in the restore phase. So probiotics are live bacteria that promote a healthy balance of bacteria throughout the digestive tract. They can be naturally found in foods, excuse me, such as yogurt. So yogurt can be used if you are not sensitive to dairy. Kefir, sauerkraut, tempeh, miso, kimchi, kombucha. I want to give you a little bit of a cautionary here. I've seen people, though, that use these too much. They just use them too much. So the good bacteria in their body actually becomes overgrown and causes its own issue. So as with anything, use even probiotics with, how can I say, with some restraint, and just use what you need. Don't go over the top. So let's talk about prebiotics. This is a type of plant fiber that acts as food for the good bacteria in your gut. In short, prebiotics are needed for probiotics to thrive in our digestive systems. So prebiotics are found in foods such as artichokes, garlic, onion, asparagus, apple, and legumes. Digestive enzymes assist in the breakdown of food and aid in nutrient absorption. Often when someone comes with a really broken digestive system, this is something we can use right away to really support the digestive process. So taking digestive enzymes during a high-fat meal, and this just makes me think too quickly about, someone who has, excuse me, their body isn't producing their own digestive enzymes, their gallbladder's been removed, or it is not working well. The actual bile that is produced by the combination of the liver and the gallbladder, its main job, the bile's main job, is to help break down fats in your food, right? Fats are needed. We've got to have them. But if the digestive process isn't working well and those fats are not being broken down, we're not getting, excuse me, we're not going to get the good out of those. So when we can bring in some, while we're working on the why, what's gone sideways in the digestive tract, using digestive enzymes can really support breakdown of foods. And it can really help with symptoms like gas, bloating, and uncomfortable fullness. Wow, excuse me, I apologize for my voice this morning. I am losing it already. Excuse me. Other important nutrients suggested for those suffering from irritable bowel syndrome can include things like fiber, which psyllium husk is probably my favorite for this, vitamin B, and I would really want to, especially vitamin B12 and B6, possibly folate. Make sure you're using the methylated forms of these. Omega-3s, actually I like to use a balanced omega-3, omega-6. Magnesium is huge, but if you have a lot of diarrhea already, you don't want to use magnesium citrate. I would suggest something more like magnesium threonate or taurine, something like that. Calcium. I don't actually, this is one that's commonly suggested, but I don't actually suggest calcium. I would prefer that you would use something like vitamin D3, K2, because that is going to help extract calcium from your food and make it, really help the body put it where it needs to go, into the bones, instead of just using calcium that is not necessarily going to be useful to the body. Vitamin E, this is a big one. Glutathione, a lot of people suggest this one. I don't suggest this one right off because glutathione is one of the main nutrients that our bodies need to detoxify in the liver. And if we haven't really addressed the issues in the digestive system before we bring in glutathione, it can actually cause a little more harm than good. Melatonin, this one is something that a lot of people take, and it can be really helpful for the sleep piece. But what we're working on it can be a good stopgap measure, but it's not fixing the issue. So the issue is the inability of the body to produce enough serotonin to make melatonin, right? Peppermint oil, oh, this is so awesome for people generally who have IBS. It's really anti-inflammatory and it's helpful. So yeah, we really individualize this type of thing when you're working with one of me or my team, because each person's needs are going to be so different. I'm actually going to skip this slide in interest of time. So last but not least, managing stress is one of the most single-handedly important things you can do to support, optimize, and sustain good health. This is giving yourself permission to rest and take time for you. Giving yourself permission to say things like, I need, or I want, right? Studies have supported that a higher stress level increases the rate of IBS complications. It's huge. What is happening for you as far as stress can really, really lean hard on what your body does in response, right? And that can be one of the biggest triggers for IBS. The gut and the central nervous system are literally intertwined, and it's incredibly important to find stress management techniques that work for you. So here are some that, and you may have ones that you like specifically for you, but here's just some, just to give you a way to start thinking about this. So deep breathing exercises, there are so many out there. Movement, dance, yoga, massage, meditation, creating art, spending time with loved ones, just hanging out, going outdoors, playing with your dog, aromatherapy, and there are so many more. But I want you to really think into this, especially if you have IBS. Really be aware of the stress trigger in your life and, work on that. Be really real with yourself about that. So thank you for taking the time to experience my Combating IBS webinar. We are so passionate about sharing this topic with people who are eager to transform their lives and finally achieve optimal health. So please share this webinar with your friends and family who are suffering with IBS. It's free, there's no obligations, but I want you to know that we as a team have been able to help our clients recover from this debilitating disease dynamic and go back to living a normal, full life. Lives that are no longer governed by how close they are to the bathroom, literally. We are accepting new clients, and I invite you to join me for a free discovery call. So when you book in for a discovery call, you talk to me. I love doing these calls with folks because I get to hear their stories. I get to hear what's going on for them and what they've tried. And then I'm able to really share hope with them. Like, how do we actually fix this for you? And sharing with them that they can actually get better, right? So go to our website. It's sagebrushwellness.com, spelled just like it sounds, and click on the book a session button that's on the home page. So go to sagebrushwellness.com and click on the book a session button. That will open up my calendar, and you can book a session in that for a time and day that really works for you. And I encourage you to do that. There's no pressure. We talk about what you have going on. And if it makes sense for us to continue and you're like, okay, this sounds like what I need, then we'll talk about what the steps are going forward. And one of the things I like to encourage people to do is come with a list of questions. And this is so different than when you actually sit down with a doctor, right? They just want to hear as little as possible and make a decision about that. That's not me. I want to hear everything. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your experiences, because every single of those questions and experiences contribute or are a reason why you got here, right? And when we can really start understanding the dynamics that are causing what's happening in your body, then it becomes easy to go, oh, you know what? We can change that. We can change that, and your body can get better. So go to our website. It's sagebrushwellness.com. Click on the book a session button, and you'll be able to schedule in directly with me. Also, if you have any further questions, please post them below in the comment section here, or you can contact us at sagebrushwellness@gmail.com. Have an amazing day. Take care.